The Miami Heat have officially finished the regular season with a record of 37-45 and have clinched or have joined the play-in tournament for the third consecutive season. What version of the Miami Heat could we be expecting just tomorrow night against the Chicago Bulls? And who exactly should we be looking at to maybe start another deep playoff run for the Miami Heat? My name is Manuel Buroz. We're going to talk about exactly that and more on this edition of Heat Digest. Before we do that, let's make sure that you guys are continuing to subscribe to the Heat Digest community. You guys have done an absolutely amazing job at continuing to grow this community even more than we could ever ask, and we appreciate you guys so much for it, and we just ask that you guys continue to do that. And remember, if you're already coming back on the regular to watch these videos, why not subscribe and be able to always be notified of any and all uploads? As mentioned, the Miami Heat haven't clinched the postseason yet, but they are in the play-in tournament, but they did not do it in the most graceful way possible, as they very much so were limping through the finish line of this regular season. Things did not go ideal, especially post-trade deadline, where we're talking about the whole Jimmy Butler saga and the whole Jimmy Butler situation. When we look at the Jimmy Butler saga, things did not go ideal. Since the trade deadline, meaning February 6th of 2025, the Miami Heat are 12-21. Now, even though that record is very, very hard to look at, the Miami Heat are very good going into the play-in tournament right now. We've all seen the kind of late end of regular season turnaround the Heat have kind of been on here, where they were on, I believe, that 6-game winning streak. It was maybe even been 7. Obviously, they lose a heartbreaker to the Grizzlies and a few other losses in there as well. But they were very much so on a winning side of a lot of these last 10 or so games, I would say, and playing very well as a collective unit. So there is some hope. Don't let that 12-21 record really fool you. I credit that a lot to the fact that the Miami Heat just weren't the Miami Heat. Like, it's really that simple. Sometimes, we don't necessarily want to just call a spade and be simple with it, but sometimes the simple answer is the correct answer. The Miami Heat, you make a trade of the Jimmy Butler magnitude in the middle of your season, well, really towards the end of your season, because the trade deadline isn't really, I know it's pegged as the midpoint of the regular season, but it's really not. By the time you hit the trade deadline, you're pretty much in the home stretch of the regular season. So now you've been dealing with that for a whole 3/4 of the season. You finally get away from that. You got to integrate in Andrew Wiggins, a Davion Mitchell. You're still trying to get Bam to get back into his form. You got a rookie in Khalil Ware who has been playing very well, but you're still trying to go through the growing pains with him, and things are just going all over the place. So 12-21, while it's still a wickedly bad record, it's somewhat understandable considering everything that's going on. Now, on the flip side of that, without Jimmy Butler this season, the Miami Heat finished now 24-33. Now, again, those last post-trade deadline games where they were 12-21, that's 33 if my math is correctly. Yeah, so 33 games in the back end of the regular season that there were no Jimmy Butler. So, yeah, I don't want to say that things were great without Jimmy, but again, there's just so much growing pains that you kind of have to, and I think we all knew that was going to happen with the Miami Heat. They were going to go through a bit of a dry spell, a bit of a hard turn, and so to speak, because again, you go through and have been dealing with the whole Jimmy Butler era, which I think will always be remembered as an era where regular season felt like it was always punted for the Miami Heat. It never really felt like they wanted the number 1 seed, aside from that one year when they actually won the number 1 seed. But still feel like a lot of people were kind of taken aback by that, and it wasn't necessarily planned that they were going to do that, or they were even expecting to do that. So I think that's going to be the biggest takeaway from the Jimmy Butler era when we talk about it. And obviously the postseason. We had talked about all the highs and the lows of the postseason in the Jimmy Butler era. So I think there's a lot of things going on with regards to that. But 24-33 without Jimmy Butler in the whole year. And again, to me, I would put more stock into this record than the record of 12-21 for the Miami Heat post-trade deadline, because 24-33, that goes to show you just how many games Jimmy Butler missed before he was traded. Again, there's 33 losses in that record. Those are the same amount of games that could have been the post-trade deadline record. So it really doesn't do too much for me, that post-trade deadline record. Like, I really don't put too much stock in it. I truly believe it's a growing pain. It's really hard for teams to come into a season after a whole offseason, after a whole training camp, and after all that, to be good off rip, let alone mid-season when you make a big trade like that and you're bringing a lot of young pieces that, they had their own situations. Again, Andrew Wiggins kind of was done in the Golden State. Obviously he has a championship run with the team, but it wasn't necessarily the post championship era of the Warriors wasn't what they were hoping for from Andrew Wiggins after they paid him. Davion Mitchell, I think, has been a stud for the Heat. I think he's a perfect fit, and I've been always wanted him to be a Miami Heat, so I think that's gonna just grow with time. Khalil Ware, same thing. I think that's gonna grow with time. Jaime Jaquez Jr., who just had a 41-point performance to end the regular season, unfortunately wasn't a loss, but hey, sometimes the ball bounces against you. I would hope that's a spark plug for him in going into the postseason. So I truly believe that the Heat are clicking at the right time. And I'll talk a little bit about predictions for me. We're going to try, Houston and I are going to try and continue to give you guys breakdowns per series, per game even. Again, trying our best to keep you guys up to date on what we see, what we're hearing, what we're seeing on the in the internet and the social media world and all that kind of stuff, from reports, from rumors, all that kind of stuff. I'll give my 2 cents on it in a minute here on the Bulls matchup and kind of a quick take, because I know that Houston covered it in his own video, and I don't want to leave him all the details for that one. But like I said, I truly put more stock into the non-Jimmy Butler record than the last post-trade deadline record. That's just my take. I truly believe that is a better showing of what this Heat team can be than a 12-21 record, where 24-33, you're 9 games under 500, which is not ideal, but it's similar to the 12-21 record. So it's like, that's why I say there's nothing. I think the records just look really bad. I know 24-33 is a lot better than 12-21. So I truly believe this team is a better team than what we've seen post-trade deadline. I think they've gone through their growing pains, and I think they're going to figure it out and make some noise in the postseason. Now, with that being said, even though the Heat finished with a record of 37-45, it's a new season. It's a new season at the end of the day, and things could not be happening at a better time. The Heat need this hard reset, and I'm sure if you've been playing sports, let alone basketball, you always hear about it. The regular season is over. It's 0-0. All coaches say that. All teams say that. All teammates say that. Parents, brothers, whatever. Everybody always says the same thing. But it's true. It is true. This is now a new season for the Miami Heat, for everybody in the association. Granted, they have a little mini season right now where they got to win 2 more games to get into the postseason, but it's nevertheless just 2 wins. It's 2 wins. Can you win 2 games in a row? Granted, it's going to be on the road, and that's going to be tough for the Heat, but I mentioned it a couple videos ago, maybe 2 or 3 videos ago now, and I kind of looking ahead here, but I said if the Heat can end up on the Cleveland side of the bracket, I like our chances better in the first round than if we were on the Boston side. Why? This is a young Cavs team. Granted, they're the best team in the Eastern Conference record-wise. They have been the best team pretty much wire to wire for the most part, aside from a few Celtics number 1 seeds in there. The Cleveland Cavaliers are a championship contender. I don't think they're a pretender. I don't think they are championship contenders. But you've seen that even when you're a championship contender, when you deal with the Miami Heat and you got to come down to Miami, you got to play Coach Spo, you got to play this young, feisty group, things don't always go your way. And when the Heat are playing with house money, that's the most dangerous Heat team. And I think this is the most house money team that the Heat have had, where none of the past teams with Jimmy Butler in the Jimmy Butler era were ever picked to win no playoff series. I'm sure every expert and every ESPN analyst will tell you the Heat are not going to win. Maybe they'll win this play-in tournament or even this play-in game against the Bulls. But I'm sure some of them are even going to pick them to get out of the tournament. I'm sure some of them even pick them to get swept against Cleveland. So there's the definition of house money, or this Miami Heat team, or is this Miami Heat team, I should say. So that's why I think if the Heat really lock in here, they can make some serious noise come postseason time. Like I mentioned, the last 10 games for the Miami Heat, for me, have been pretty good. And, we're going to talk about both the Heat and the Bulls. But first, we're going to talk about the Heat here. Again, these are the last 10 games for the Miami Heat. Mentioned a lot of wins in this. You see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6-4 for all the Miami Heat. Could have been 7-3 if Bill Coulibaly doesn't hit a prayer at the end of regulation, at the end of the game against the Wizards this past Sunday. So really, the Heat, in my opinion, are one bounce away from being 7-3. Now, granted, one of those 3 losses was against the Bulls, so that's not ideal. But again, that's just one game, and at that point, you never know what is going on with a lot of these teams and who they're playing. The Heat could have been easily playing for the future, but you look at some of these records, you look at some of these numbers, the Heat are averaging about 121 points per game. They're grabbing about 47 rebounds. They're getting about 28 assists per game, which I think is a good number. I would like to see the number go up to about 30, though, about moving the ball, especially the way we are designed right now, where we're not necessarily a superstar-driven team. So I definitely want to see that number go up a little bit, just by 2 assists. And then you've got win the steal battle from any and all opponents they play against. The Heat have to be able to control the turnover battle and control the steal battle. If they do that, I think they're going to be doing very, very well. Almost 4 blocks per game. Looking at Khalil Ware, they're looking at Bam Adebayo. If the Heat defense in the back line, front line, however you want to call it, I'm gonna call it the back. I'm calling it the front line since that's the front court. I think they're gonna be an X factor in this series, specifically because you got Nikola Vucevic, who's one of the best, I think one of the most underrated players in the association. I'm not saying he's a stud or anything like that, but when we talk about post offense, we talk about spacing the floor, we talk about rebounding the basketball. He's one of the best in the association. I think flies under the radar. So I definitely think that'll be a big for the Khalil Ware specifically. His first test of similar or almost postseason atmosphere. He's going to be really, really tested against a veteran like Vooch. And then you talk about the field goal percentage. The Miami Heat right now, they're shooting about 49%. That's great. And 40% from the three-point line. I'll give you the 41%. That's important. The Heat right now, they need to be able to knock down shots. I know we're a defensive-minded team. We're always going to be a defensive-minded team, whether Spo is at the helm, Pat Riley's at the helm, or anybody else. But at the end of the day, the point of this sport is to put the ball in the basket more than your opponents. It's a make or miss league. It's really that simple. If the Heat can't knock down open shots, I'm not talking about the tough ones that could or could not. I'm not talking about the what ifs, the rims. And no, if you have a great possession and you're able to swing the ball, move the ball, get open shots to your shooters, to your best players, get some easy looks in transition, you gotta knock those down. If you don't knock those down, you're gonna put more pressure on your half court offense than you will and alleviating that pressure. And we're just not that great in the half court, in my opinion. We have moments, don't get me wrong, but we all know how it works. When the postseason hits, even in the play-in tournament, things slow down. You don't get too many transition buckets. You don't get too many easy buckets. There are not that many mental breakdowns from the defensive side of things from the other team. So you have to be able to knock down those moments, knock down those shots when you do have or get blessed with the broken down defense from the opponent. So I think the Heat have to come down to be able to shoot the basketball. Now, do I think they need to shoot at a 41% clip? That would be great. I think you got to stick around the low 40s, though. Even 39, 38 is too dicey for me. I need them about 40 to 41. You're going to be good there. Anything more, and I'm loving it, and we're going to be great, and I'm going to be very, very excited for the official postseason to begin for the Miami Heat. Now, looking over at the Chicago Bulls real quick here. The Bulls, they're a little bit different. They are on a 7-3 record in the last 10 games. You see there were only 3 losses against Cleveland, which is understandable, against the Thunder, which is understandable, and the Mavericks, which is semi-understandable, but at the same time, I do believe AD played in that game, so understandable there. You have big wins against the Lakers. You got a good win against the Miami Heat, obviously. But in the rest of the opponents, again, this is a situation where the Bulls are going in 7-3, but they haven't really been tested. And the few games they were tested, they lost. Aside from, again, that Heat and that Lakers win, I mean, you beat the Sixers. You're supposed to beat the Sixers. You're supposed to beat the Wizards. You're supposed to beat the Hornets. You're supposed to beat the Portland Trailblazers. Maybe the Raptors, I know depending on who you talk to, could say that's a good win for the Bulls. But, I mean, I'm not going to be one of those people. I think that could be a hit or miss one, to be honest. So, at the end of the day, are you really a good 7-3 team? You're averaging about 121 points per game. You're rebounding the ball very well. Obviously, they are getting about 30 assists per game. The steal department, about 7. And they have a really good perimeter defense, so I'm kind of a little concerned there for the Miami Heat on that front. But then you look at the shooting numbers. The Bulls, 48%. The three-point percentage is 37%. Again, the Miami Heat, I do believe, have a better shooting team than the Chicago Bulls. So I think the Heat are going in, while they're going in 6-4, again, just a one-game difference, and it could have been a Bill Coulibaly bounce of a one-game difference. I do believe that the Heat and the Bulls match up very well, and I will give the edge to the Heat because coaching, for sure, and I believe talent-wise, we have the better team overall, so I'm trusting that to carry us through this first play-in game. specifically for some matchups and some things that I think will help the Heat. Again, I'm not going to deep dive into it too much, but I'm just going to reiterate what I said. I do believe the X factor for me in this game, and we'll look at the real quick here before I actually give that. When we talk about the last 10 games, the Miami Heat have had these 9 players be your leading scorers. Tyler Hero at 28 points per game, Bam Adebayo at 21, Andrew Wiggins at 13, Davion Mitchell and Duncan Robinson at 12, Jaime Jaquez at 11 with Alec Burks, Khalil Ware at 11, and Peel Larson with 9. Those are your top 9 scorers. Kind of a good distribution in my opinion. I do believe Tyler Hero should take most of the shots. I think Bam Adebayo should be second. Could be Andrew Wiggins being second. And I think a lot of people are going to pick Andrew Wiggins as maybe an X factor for this franchise moving into this postseason. And I understand that. I'm sure we're going to hear some Andrew Wiggins, some Jaime Jaquez, maybe even a Duncan Robinson in there. I'm going to go with the rookie. I'm going with the rookie, and I know that might be like a safe or not a very risky, like a safe pick on an X factor. But I truly believe, just because for me, when I look at this Bulls team, yes, you have Josh Giddey. I'm not going to be too worried about Josh Giddey, because even though he's a great playmaker, even though he is kind of a mismatch problem for a lot of the guards that we're going to have, I truly believe Davion Mitchell, the way he plays physically on defense, is going to alienate a lot of what Josh Giddey wants to do. You don't have to double Giddey in the post with Davion Mitchell's guarding that. You don't have to worry about that on the perimeter. Like, Josh Giddey's not knocking down shots like that. If you lose because Josh Giddey's having a career night from three-point line, it just wasn't your night. It is what it is. In my opinion, the guard Josh Giddey, who wants to be a playmaker, you make him be a scorer. If you lose with Josh Giddey scoring 40 points on you, you tip your hats off to him. You can't take away everything, and you made him do something that he doesn't want to do, which is score the ball at the end of the day. My more concern is Nikola Vucevic. That's where I'm looking at when we talk about the Chicago Bulls team, because, again, he's a veteran. He's been here before, literally, in this moment in the play-in tournament with the Chicago Bulls. So I'm truly looking at Khalil Ware as being a threat defensively. I am not worried about the offense of Khalil Ware because, again, while he's maybe one of the top 9 scorers in the past 10 games, we're not looking at Khalil Ware to have a 20-point performance. Again, I'll take it. Don't get me wrong. But defensively is what I'm looking at when we talk about Khalil Ware's X-factor ability. Blocking shots, contesting shots at least. And remember, Nikola Vucevic can spread the floor. So Khalil Ware is going to have to come out. He's going to have to be able to guard the paint as well as guard him on the perimeter. So, granted, I do believe if him and Bam are playing at the same time, which I wouldn't be surprised if Spo goes with running Bam on Vooch because he will be on the perimeter a lot more. There is a completely realistic world where that happens, and you put Khalil Ware on a non-shooter on the court for the Bulls, which they do have plenty of. Again, 37% as a team. I believe that's the safe bet. But if Bam is not on the court and Khalil Ware is, and he's got to be able to guard Vooch and protect the rim, he's going to be tested as a rookie, being able to be disciplined, not getting a foul trouble, because if Khalil Ware gets in a foul trouble, I think we're going to be in trouble again. I think we're going to be a very tough situation. So my X factor is absolutely Khalil Ware. If Khalil Ware can lock in and he's going to be I don't need him to be an established vet or anything like that. I just need him to be above a rookie. I need him to be above what he is this is new to him in every sense of the word. So if we can do that from Khalil Ware, I do believe the Miami Heat will have a very good chance and will most likely win this first round playing tournament. I'm calling it. I do believe the Heat win on the road tomorrow tonight, if you guys are listening to this and watching this on Tuesday, against the Chicago Bulls. But that's my take. Go ahead and leave it down in the comments below who you think is the most important player in this game for the Miami Heat. Is it Khalil Ware? Is it Bam Adebayo? Is it somebody else I didn't mention? Leave it down below and let us know. We'll catch you guys in the next episode of Heat Digest.